Steph Curry and LeBron James, two of the greatest players in NBA history. And the relationship they've built is so important that you really can't understand one's career without the other. What makes their relationship so interesting is that their backgrounds cannot be any more different, but their legacies ultimately so similar. From LeBron being born into a situation where he felt his love and passion for basketball was not only a means for happiness, but a way to save his family, especially his mom, Gloria Marie James, out of poverty. But when it comes to Steph Curry, couldn't be any more the opposite. Steph was born to be the son of Del Curry, a successful NBA player, and where LeBron found desperation as his motivation, Curry was able to leverage his networking and the opportunities that being an NBA player's son came with. His pure obsession and his opportunity to chase his dream was the foundation to which Steph Curry was able to become the greatest shooter of all time. And to think it began for both of them in the same hospital in Akron, Ohio. But before their historical rivalry really could blossom, both would have to travel their own separate paths to greatness, to the top of the NBA. And once again could not have looked any different from one another. LeBron, the prodigy who was destined for greatness, and Steph, the underdog who defied expectations. LeBron James, coming out of St. Vincent St. Mary High School, was one of the most talked about and hyped up situations we've ever seen in sports culture. And it's very possible we'll never see anything like it again. With the explosion of the internet just happening, LeBron was getting NBA level exposure into his high school basketball career.
Shaq shows up to your game. I don't know, that was just wild to me.
Every game that we have is sold out. You know, I can remember my freshman year, it was only 300 people in the stands, not knowing nothing about us. But now it's sold out every night, 5,000 to 6,000. And, but I'm liking it.
To his game against Carmelo Anthony at Oak Hill, to being put on the front of Sports Illustrated, LeBron James was truly being advertised as the next Michael Jordan of basketball. We really had never seen this much anticipation for any type of player before. Drink your water. To which no one's surprise, in 2003 was drafted #1 overall, which was considered quite arguably the greatest draft of all time, with players such as Dwayne Wade, Carmelo Anthony, and also the greatest bust of all time. LeBron had entered the NBA with the red carpet at his feet, but for Steph Curry, again, it was quite the opposite. With Steph Curry being ranked the 16th player in North Carolina and the 60th in the nation, his future in the NBA was nowhere near certain. Whereas LeBron could have picked really any school in the nation and been their #1 option, Steph could not find a team that was willing to take him on with a full scholarship. With not a single D1 school offering him said scholarship, including Virginia Tech, both his parents' alma mater, Steph ended up having to pick between Winthrop, Virginia Commonwealth, and Davidson. And with Steph Curry understanding that he's a smaller guard, he knew he would need all the playing time he could get, as much time as he could in front of NBA scouts. And with Steph seeing Davidson as the best opportunity to do so, Curry joined Davidson in 2006. And ultimately his decision would pay off, as he would go on to lead Davidson to their greatest days in their NCAA history, including one of the most impressive March Madness runs we've ever seen. This is really where LeBron and Steph's relationship really started.
Hey.
See, Curry had this habit of going off whenever LeBron was in the building. And on December 6, 2008, when LeBron visited Charlotte where Davidson was playing the Wolfpack, Steph Curry ended up finishing with 44 points, 3 assists, 3 steals, and the W. This game actually got so much publicity that it made its way around ESPN the next day, and in the 2000s, the way to go viral in sports was to make it on SportsCenter. But this wasn't the only time LeBron was actually in attendance for one of Steph's biggest games. On March 28, 2008, Davidson was playing Wisconsin in the Sweet 16. And this ended up being one of the most dominant games Curry and Davidson ever put together. Curry finished with 33 points and 4 assists, winning 73 to 56. LeBron had no idea he was scouting the one person who would stand in his way from being the undisputed GOAT of all time. And Steph had no idea he was being watched by the person that would ultimately define his career. But once both LeBron and Steph had gotten into the league, their journey to the top once again could not have been any different. LeBron out the gate was the leading player on a Cavs team that was openly opposed to having such a young player as the #1 option. Before the draft in 2003, future teammates like Carlos Boozer and Darius Miles were openly discussing how they had no faith in LeBron.
I don't think you can really just bring a high school player in and really just think your team gonna really turn around like that. You know what I'm saying? He can just hop on our bandwagon.
What?
Almost every one of my channel's viewers is not subscribed to the channel. Do me a huge favor and hit that subscription button. We're trying to get monetized. my dog and I. But by his 4th year, LeBron had drugged arguably the worst roster in history to the finals. There was no player in the NBA that needed convincing that LeBron was now one of the best players in the league. While there are many that would point out the fact that LeBron did lose this finals, even the greatest LeBron hater has to admit, when you look at the supporting cast of LeBron versus Duncan, it makes you wonder what kind of basketball they were playing over there in the Eastern Conference. Steph, on the other hand, was faced with a completely different scenario. He was drafted onto a team that was already saturated at guard. The Warriors currently had Monta Ellis, who had a very similar skill set to Steph Curry. And this is one of the very few similarities that LeBron and Steph's careers had that parallel, as early on they both had teammates that clearly did not want them on their team. It was absolutely no secret Ellis felt insulted when the Warriors drafted Curry. So not only was Steph's opportunity to carve out minutes in jeopardy, he was also facing health issues as his ankles were consistently sidelining him. And even though these ankle issues would end up being a major issue in his career, they would ultimately be one of the reasons the Warriors dynasty could even happen to begin with. On March 3rd, 2012, when Monta Ellis, Epke Udoh, and Kwame Brown got traded to the Bucks in exchange for Andrew Bogut and Steven Jackson, it really should have been Steph in Monte's place. But after the Bucks doctors looked more into Steph's ankles, they did not feel comfortable trading for him. So it ended up being Monta Ellis instead. Think about how different history would be if that trade had gone down. Do the Bucks still draft Giannis? And if so, does Giannis become the player he is today? How many championships do Steph and Giannis win together? But it was from here that their seeds were planted for the future. The Warriors finished that 2012 season 23-43, but in the following 2013 year, with all their new pieces put together for a full training camp, they finished 47-35, which was good enough for the 6th seed in the Western Conference, where they ended up losing to the Spurs in the Western Conference semifinals, who would then lose to the Miami Heat and LeBron James. But this would be the last time this decade LeBron ever got to the finals without having to deal with Steph Curry, as LeBron went on to lose 4-1 in the 2014 finals against the Spurs, which of course set up his return to Cleveland in 2015. And this is the year their relationship truly develops, as this would mark the first of 4 years in a row these two teams would play each other in the finals, something that's never happened in history. This was the year for LeBron to come back and rectify his mistakes when he originally left. This was also the year that the homegrown Warriors were ready to announce themselves to the league as they finished the regular season 67-15. Both the Cavs and the Warriors buzzed through their competition in the playoffs, as the Warriors posted a 12-3 record entering the finals, as the Cavs were right ahead of them at 12-2. Unfortunately though, for the Cavs, in the first round, Kevin Love injured his shoulder against the Celtics in arguably one of the dirtiest plays in NBA history by Kelly Olynyk. And then in game 1 of the finals, Kyrie ended up going out to an ankle injury and missed the rest of the series. But even with these massive losses, LeBron and the Cavs still put up a fight, as the first 4 games of the series went back and forth, with the Warriors winning games 1 and 4 while the Cavs took 2 and 3. It was actually game 4 that swung the entire series. This is where Steve Kerr infamously put in Andre Iguodala into the starting lineup to help slow down LeBron, who still ended up averaging 35 points, 13 rebounds, and 9 assists, which somehow won Iggy the Finals MVP. This is something that is still highly debated today, as Steph Curry was highly criticized for not winning that Finals MVP in 2015.
Did you feel like you deserved MVP in that finals?
Question, I feel like I deserve it for sure.
As many believed he was snubbed, with averages of 26 points, 6 assists, and 5 rebounds. Should have taken him home the MVP, as LeBron still ended up having a monster series with Iggy guarding him. And if this series was any indication for what was to come in this rivalry, then we were in for quite the treat. The 2016 NBA regular season might actually go down as the greatest season of all time. Steph Curry winning the first unanimous MVP in history as they broke the regular season record, while Kobe completed his farewell tour, was some of the best sports television we had seen. In fact, on April 13th, 2016, we might have had the greatest night in NBA regular season TV history. On one channel, we had Kobe Bryant's final game, and on the other, we had the Warriors going for the regular season record. True basketball fans will never forget how awesome it was going back and forth between the two. And it was just as fitting, as somehow these playoffs would be even more entertaining than the regular season had been. From when the Warriors came back 3-1 against Kevin Durant and the Oklahoma City Thunder, which is the playoff series that gave us the vintage Game 6 Clay that we all love and remember. And then of course the NBA Finals that included the infamous Game 5 suspension of Draymond, and then ultimately the 3-1 comeback of the Cavaliers. And in those NBA Finals, after the Cavaliers had won Game 6, LeBron was quoted as saying,
Mentally and physically, I'm telling you,
And you can even look to that moment in Game 6 where LeBron blocked Steph and had a few choice words to say afterwards. The moment was not lost on LeBron. He understood what it meant if he lost another finals. This truly here might be the climax of both their careers. This is why the relationship is so important and it goes so deep. It matters so much in defining the other person's legacy. The results of this series really carried so much weight in how history would remember them. There was maybe no other game in either of their careers which was important to them as that Game 7 back in 2016. Each player truly had the ultimate greatness at their fingertips. LeBron being placed into the GOAT conversation with 3 rings and delivering the greatest championship to Ohio in history, all while doing so coming back from 3-1. Steph needed to put the final stamp on a 73-9 season to avoid the "it don't mean a thing without a ring" meme, but also secure a finals MVP which had eluded him the year before, which would have secured his reputation as the man on this team, which not to mention put his team in position to three-peat, which we know some of the greatest of all time have done. It's such an important piece in building your legacy. And to really understand how emotionally involved these players were in this game, you don't need to look any further than each of these players' shooting percentage, because so much hung in the balance. Steph Curry shot an abysmal 32% from the field and only scored 17 points. And had it not been for Draymond's actually superhuman performance making 6 threes on 75% from deep, the Warriors might have been blown out. And if you remember that game, you remember that behind the back pass from Steph that went out of bounds. That was a great caricature of Game 7 for him. If he makes that pass and it turns into an assist, it becomes one of the greatest highlights, one of the greatest seasons, and one of the greatest final series in history. Steph throwing that ball away is the perfect example of Steph and the Warriors throwing away something absolutely beautiful. But where Steph couldn't impact the game, LeBron could. LeBron only shot 38% from the field, but was able to put up 27 points, securing 11 rebounds, dishing out 11 assists with 2 steals and 3 blocks, including this play which arguably is one of the most iconic NBA moments ever. The one thing that LeBron always had at his disposal was that he had so much physical talent that even if his shot was off, he could impact the game in so many other ways off the boards and on defense. Something that will unfortunately always impact Steph Curry's all-time ranking because of so many that believe there are natural liabilities that come with his size. But at the same time, that's also what makes him so great. His ability to thrive in a league where he's 4 inches shorter and about 50 pounds lighter than everybody else, still be one of the most impactful players of his era. No, I'm serious, drink your water. It was at this moment in their careers that LeBron had broken Steph. And as Kyrie hit that dagger to win Game 7, little did LeBron know he was seeing the first step in a line of dominoes that would end up turning into be his worst nightmare. The Warriors giving up that 3-1 lead to the Cavs and losing the finals had cut and hurt them so deeply they ended up turning to one of their biggest rivals in Kevin Durant and recruiting him onto their team. This was one of the most controversial moves in all of sports history. Never had we seen such a high-level player leave his team, which was one of the top contending teams in the league, for the team that had beat them in the playoffs the year before. This was simply unheard of, and this had broken the unwritten rule to so many other veterans. Kevin Durant was criticized just as much, if not more, than LeBron James had when he had left Cleveland for Miami. Not only was this 2016 series the climax of their careers, it was also another time and element in their relationship that tied their careers together, their legacies. Steph and LeBron could both now say they were a part of 2 of the biggest super teams in NBA history. The situation that Steph Curry had found himself in was something that LeBron James understood, something he had been through before.
Not 6, not 7.
The lie detector determined that was a lie.
If there was anybody in the league, any team in the league that could beat this team, it was going to be LeBron James. 2017 was the beginning of one of the most dominant 2-year reigns over the league we'd ever seen. And if it honestly wasn't for a few injuries and a weird late game feud against the Clippers, it may have ended up being near a decade. There are actually a lot of sports fans that should be very grateful for what Draymond did that night, for it was his actions that would ultimately persuade Kevin Durant to leave to Brooklyn. Anytime we've seen a team like this formed, we automatically pencil them into the finals and call them the champions. The 04 and 2012 Lakers, the 96 Rockets, the 2023 Clippers, the 2013 and 2021 Nets. These are all teams that seemed unbeatable on paper, but had these foreseeable issues that people chose to ignore that ended up actually being their downfall. The Warriors were a proven championship organization with a system that benefited from adding KD. Think of a V12 engine that you put a turbo on. It's only gonna get better. Kevin Durant truly is the ultimate ultimate offensive weapon. And when he was placed in a situation where he couldn't be double teamed, knowing that if they did, Steph and Klay would make them pay, this opened up the floor for Kevin Durant like he would never see in his career again, and ultimately led to being one of the reasons why they were such an offensive juggernaut. But whether or not you agree with KD's move, it worked, and Steph was able to put LeBron in some of the most uncomfortable positions of his career. In 2017 and 2018, the Warriors finished with records of 67-15 and 58-24 respectively, and both years going through the playoffs with very little resistance. Even though many would argue that the Spurs may have taken them 7 games if Kawhi didn't get hurt in that third quarter when Zaza Pachulia closed out too closely, or they lose Game 7 to the Rockets if Chris Paul doesn't end up injuring his hamstring. Meanwhile, in the East, LeBron's 2017 and 2018 seasons could not have been more tumultuous. There was no other team that felt the pressure of KD going to the Warriors more than the Cavaliers, as that move was designed specifically to stop them. And in 2017, they regressed and only finished 51-31, and while many started to think that the Cavs might be finished, they woke up in the playoffs and absolutely steamrolled their way to the finals. But just when LeBron thought things couldn't get any harder, the one person he was able to rely on throughout this entire battle against Steph and the Warriors was leaving his side. The person who sank the Game 7 dagger in 2016 and helped secure Cleveland's first championship in history would be headed to Boston. And this came as a shock to everybody, as Kyrie and LeBron had been on top of the basketball world for the last couple of years. He really was the Robin to LeBron's Batman, but unfortunately it was that Robin nickname that made him seek validation somewhere else. It was this move by Kyrie that essentially cemented the fact that LeBron would be headed to LA. The Cavs couldn't make the roster changes they needed to truly contend. J.R. Smith took up almost $14 million a year, and with Tristan Thompson taking in about $16.5 million, there just wasn't the flexibility. And with today's crazy contracts, that might not seem like that much, but back in the day, only 10 years ago, that was a massive contract. And to make matters even worse, their performances dipped immediately after 2016 and did not warrant the hit their cap was taking. And this was the worst part about it for LeBron. He had essentially lost Kyrie for nothing. His newest teammate, Isaiah Thomas, might have been coming off a career year there in Boston, but was also coming off a major hip injury, which would essentially end his career. Jay Crowder, who was a great role player, coupled with this version of Isaiah Thomas, was literal pennies on the dollar for what they lost in Kyrie. But Kyrie's departure really didn't make a difference between the finals in 2017 and 2018. In fact, one could argue that Kyrie's departure allowed for LeBron to be at his all-time peak in 2018, as he was required to do more than he ever had in his career. Nothing would prove that more than the next 2 years. The 2017 finals was a gentleman's sweep of the Cavs that for a moment felt like the stage was set for LeBron to come back from a 3-0 lead against the greatest team of all time, but unfortunately the Warriors easily put away the Cavs after Game 5 to secure their second championship in 4 years. And in 2018, the results were only more brutal for the Cavs as they were officially swept in 4, including one of the most embarrassing moments in sports history. On May 31st, 2018, we were treated to one of the greatest final games we've had in recent history. LeBron played 48 minutes to put up 51 points, 8 rebounds, and 8 assists, while the trio of Klay, KD, and Steph put up 79 points. The ending of this game was a brilliant back and forth that culminated with George Hill going to the free throw line with 4.7 seconds to shoot 2 free throws and a chance to win the game. Nobody thought the Cavs could be in this position. The score was 107-106, and after George Hill sunk the first free throw of the two, Oracle Arena was an absolute shock that they could be 4 seconds from losing the game. But to their delight and immediate horror, and then delight again, he missed the second free throw, to which J.R. Smith got the offensive rebound, but in some slew of panic ran away from the hoop until time expired. The Warriors would go on to win in overtime, but this image of LeBron will forever be a summary of his struggle against these Warriors. No matter what he did, it felt like injuries or something out of his control was always stacking the deck against him. He had just put on arguably the greatest performance on a basketball court against arguably the greatest team in history, and it was all washed away in 4.5 seconds. And to cap things off, LeBron fractured his hand punching the wall in frustration with JR in the locker room afterwards, which undoubtedly impeded his play the rest of the series. Imagine what a healthy and even more motivated LeBron with a 1-0 lead could have done, but we'll never know, as the next 3 games were simply a formality. The Cavs were simply too emotionally drained from that Game 1 debacle and didn't put up much of a fight the rest of the series. Drink more. LeBron in the 2017 finals averaged 34 points a game, 12 rebounds, and 10 assists. And in 2018, he averaged 34 points, 10 assists, and 8 rebounds. These are absolutely historic performances that against any other team would secure a championship and a finals MVP. But against this Warriors team, it was only enough to secure 1 win in 9 games. It was at this time that Steph had truly broken LeBron. Their relationship had come full circle. Only 2 years ago, LeBron had broken Steph so badly, he was willing to hand over the keys to his team to Kevin Durant. And now Steph had returned the favor to the point where LeBron would head across the country to Los Angeles for a change of scenery. But as Steph would find out in the 2019 playoffs, selling your soul comes with the price, as his entire team around him would collapse to injuries in the finals against the Raptors, once again dooming his quest to three-peat, something neither Steph or LeBron have been able to do. One of the very few things lacking from both their resumes when comparing them to players like Kobe or Michael Jordan. Steph and the Warriors had this obsession, this unrelenting desire to take down LeBron that had ended up pushing them down a path that led to their own destruction. After the 2019 season, Kevin Durant left for the Brooklyn Nets, and Klay Thompson would essentially miss the next 2 seasons recovering from injury. And this would lead the Warriors into the darkest days of the Curry era, which would eventually be corrected with some trades that landed Andrew Wiggins and the emergence of Jordan Poole. As for LeBron, his time in LA was not exactly going much better. He was enduring a rebuilding phase where he found himself with youngsters like Lonzo Ball, Brandon Ingram, and Josh Hart. That was until LeBron blessed a trade that would send all of them out and bring Anthony Davis in, which would set the stage for the last chapter in their careers. When LeBron departed for the Western Conference, many expected annual battles in the playoffs between the two, but year after year, it failed to happen. But on May 19th, 2021, the basketball world finally got their wish as the Lakers and Warriors would face off in the play-in game. And to nobody's surprise, this was a game for the ages. Steph dropped 37 points on 12 of 23 shooting, including 6 threes and 7 rebounds. But for once, LeBron had the benefit of the better team. And after hitting this 3 to win the game, he could finally find some solace knowing he exacted a little bit of revenge for 2017 and 2018. However, this triumph wouldn't last long, as Curry would go on to win the title next year, securing his 4th championship to equal LeBron. Both LeBron and Steph now had 2 championships with super teams and 2 championships without. Now the question would be, who could get to number 5 first? The next series we'd get between the two was in the 2023 Western Conference semifinals, as LeBron's new-look Lakers looked to continue their hot streak after posting a 17-9 record after the All-Star break into the playoffs. Meanwhile, we were seeing Steph Curry play some of the best basketball of his career, as he was averaging near 30 points, 6 rebounds, and 6 assists, while willing his team to victory every night just like LeBron had done so much in the past. This, however, would be the least exciting series we'd ever get between the two, as the Lakers went on to beat the Warriors 4-2, and the series really never felt competitive. The Lakers would go up 3-1, and even though the Warriors did win Game 5, Game 6 was never in doubt. The idea that their competitive days were behind them were a real possibility, and the fact that 2024 was an absolute failure for both of their teams, that they had finally closed the book that was the story of their rivalry. But thanks to a certain Olympic athlete named Noah Lyles and the underachieving US men's team at the 2023 FIBA World Cup, LeBron and Steph would have one more chapter to write, except this would be completely different. The 2024 Paris Olympics had set the stage for potentially the greatest US men's national basketball team we'd ever seen. The main reason for that? Steph Curry and LeBron James. And what the world would be treated to will go down the history books, as this Olympic tournament includes some of the most historic games of our era. From the US team being down 17 points to Serbia to rally back in the second half, to the gold medal game against France, in which we saw some of the most vintage Steph Curry that had ever been put on display. In the final 3 minutes, Steph finished 4 for 4 on 3-pointers, including this 3 over these 2 defenders, twice his size, to secure the gold. And with LeBron receiving MVP of the tournament, there was nothing more fitting, as for the last decade, it was both Steph and LeBron who were the face of the league, and had brought us some of the most iconic moments in NBA history. An element that nobody had seen coming was just how effortlessly their play styles matched, and how well they complemented off of one another. An entire dialogue, an entire conversation started about how amazing of teammates they were to one another, and what they could have achieved had they played together. This was such a stark contrast from the images we had seen just a decade ago. Now, it's no secret, both players would be open to being teammates in the NBA, and that in itself has pushed the NBA world into a frenzy of trade ideas that could allow this to happen, especially with both their teams having very little chance to win the title. Do these two players have a prologue left to write? Could they team up together for one last ride? Could they secure their 5th championship together? Could they truly come full circle and end their careers as teammates instead of rivals? You see, LeBron and Steph, no matter how different in appearance, have so much in common in their journey, their story. One was not supposed to succeed based on where he came from. The other was not supposed to succeed because of his size. But both overcame, and in the process developed a relationship with one another that would shape a narrative narrative that would help define one of the most important eras in NBA history. There is no Stephen Curry without LeBron James. There is no LeBron James without Stephen Curry. What is your favorite memory in the story of LeBron James and Steph Curry? Has either of their legacies impacted you as a person or basketball player? Let me know in the comments. This video took over 30 hours to edit and was one of the most intense things I've ever done, but I had so much fun doing it and can't wait to bring you another one. And if you enjoyed this video, think about watching either of these videos that's on the screen. As always, hit that sub button and turn on notifications. Go out there and do something great.